There is my Black culture. There is you guys' Black culture. There is the African Black culture. There is Canadian Black culture. There is Central American and South American Black culture.
Welcome to the Woodlands Area Chamber of Commerce Young Professional Network podcast, a show where we discuss topics related to business, lifestyle, politics, and other challenges that young professionals are facing. We want our millennials and Gen Z to strengthen today for your impact on tomorrow.
Welcome back to another episode of our Young Professionals podcast, where we talk about issues and topics that affect our young adults. My name is Cameron Cruz with 5 Point Credit Union. We have a very exciting, I'm excited about this episode. Y'all know this is my jam right here. We have a very special Black History episode today to share with you all. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves first. Let's start right here.
Hi everybody, I'm Shazza Adams. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications here at the Chamber.
I'm Morgan McZill. I'm Director of Government Affairs.
I'm Andrea Archer, and I am the staff assistant here at the Chamber. I work hand in hand with Chaz and Margot.
We're happy to have Andrea. New face, new things, new year. Well, even though it's February.
And Chazette as well. She's always
behind the camera.
Yeah, I'm always doing behind the camera. Hi everybody.
Go ahead. Let's take us there.
Well, before we get started, I really want to say that this topic, this month's topic is in honor of Black History Month. And it's important for the Chamber because it ties into our core values, one of which is treat everybody with honesty, integrity, and respect. And it also ties into our strategy for our 3-year plan, which is to ensure that we help to bring more diversity and inclusion to our community. So I am so excited to be touching on this topic and to be talking with you ladies, my fellow young professionals, and I'm hoping that we can impact and empower a lot of people through this conversation.
Yes, we'll have open conversation and share our truth, I think, on our journey and give some insight on some things. So it's going to be a good conversation.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start it off with Margot.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'll take it away. So we wanted to share some influential individuals here in Texas that have opened the doors for an individual like myself to have a position here at the Chamber as Director of Government Affairs. So I'll start it off. So the first one that we are going to be recognizing and celebrating is Barbara Jordan. A Houston native, Jordan was the first Black woman elected to the Texas State Senate and first Black Texan in Congress. She helped manage Get Out the Vote program that served Houston's 40 African American precincts in the 1960s. So I'm more than sure everyone has heard her name, has seen her dedication at Texas Southern University, and the importance that she's played. So we wanted to salute her today. We'll go to the next one.
Yeah, so next we have Reverend Bill Lawson, the pastor of Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. Lawson was a pioneer in the civil rights movement and helped to lead the battle to end segregation here in Houston. He quoted, "I believe in bringing people to the table together, even if we don't all agree. At least we're able to hear one another." Yes.
Awesome. And just a quick little fact. Melanie Lawson on Channel 13, this is her father. So just think of the role that he played marching with Martin Luther King Jr. and trying to make an impact just here locally. So that is someone that is still alive, still well, and, has that vision, and hopefully we will achieve that vision. I mean, I feel like we still have a long way to go, but we've came so far. So thank you for sharing that.
And even now, he is the pastor at Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, not as big out in the Woodlands, but it is a very big social place for Black Americans in the Houston area. A lot of people that live in the Houston area go to Wheeler Avenue. It's like the Lakewood for African Americans for the most part. A lot of them, they do a lot of social events, they do a lot of justice events, and it's a lot of relation there. So that's a very important part, especially with him still being alive. I think that's really important.
And he took a seat back, but seeing him come out and say a few words during the George Floyd protest here was really exciting to see him and just to have that powerful figure speak upon the injustice that was going on.
Next, we have Cameron.
Oh, it feels so good not to be hosting this time and sharing. I get lost in La La Land. So my next person is Mickey Leland, and I could probably do this off the top of my head, but I'm gonna fact quote it this time, I promise. So he was known for the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Not only that, but he was responsible for the passing of the legislation that provided low-income consumers with access to affordable generic drugs. So he is responsible in a lot of with the HMOs that you see in your insurance. He still now has a lot of buildings, awards, the legacy followed behind him in Houston. Again, another TSUer. I think he went to Wheatley High School. So another big Black Houston, Texas person.
Yeah. Well, I have Deloitte T Parker, and he was the co-founder and executive director of SHAPE, Shape Community Center in Houston. Parker has helped lead the way toward justice, equality, opportunity, and human rights across the globe. His parents instilled in him a sense of humility, a willingness to help, the courage to face adversity, and the strength to fight injustice.
Absolutely. So we'll share a couple of more as we go on the podcast, but we just want to give you a glimpse of the impact that the history that we have in our Black heritage here in Houston, and just how impactful it is with these individuals. So next up, we have Miss Juanita J. Craft. She is a significant civil rights figure, the second African-American woman to serve on the Dallas City Council. And Miss Juanita is really famous for also helping be a safe haven for Lyndon B. Johnson and Martin Luther King Jr. whenever they traveled. So a long time ago, they used to have a Black book, and that would be, at the time, many African Americans weren't able to go into hotels or eat. So that gave them avenue to work with different families in the areas they were visiting and stay there, and they would feed them and take care of them. So she is very well known for that. Her home is a museum now dedicated for that. And she stayed in that home for 65 years. So it is a really big part of her history. And they also, in Dallas, named a city park and recreation center after her. So she has very strong ties in the Dallas area.
Another strong Texan.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Anybody else?
Oh, I have Maya Angelo, and let's talk about the fact that she is now on the
Yes,
quota. So
that's
really
amazing.
good.
She is on that quarter, finally.
Yeah.
We have
see
Harriet Tubman.
On the
yeah.
what, $20 bill?
$20. Hopefully that get approved soon.
Yeah. And Maya Angelou was a civil rights activist, poet, and award-winning author. She became Hollywood's first female Black director, but is best known for her 1969 memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Instead, pursue the things you love doing, and then do them so well that people can't take their eyes off you.
Oh, I think everybody knows who Maya Angelou
Yes.
is. If you don't know, then you have really not been doing your research, been informed. But even her books, the book that Chazette just mentioned, we laugh because all of us have read that book, and I mean, I still have that book, and that was a major gift for me. So she's definitely one of my influencers that I take to heart.
I think at one point you had to, it was on your reading list. I know when I was in high school, or maybe it was middle school, I don't remember. I know it was on a reading list. So that's also really important to put it in front of education too.
I just want to say Maya Angelou also was a calypsonian. And calypso is a type of music in the Caribbean, and she wrote a calypso album. And so it's, I only recently found out about it, probably like last 2 years, but it's good to know that, she dipped out into other cultures, and calypso is basically poetry in song. So I think that's why she was, and it's all about the truth. Like
Right.
everything calypso is said in calypso is the truth, So whatever the calypsonian sings about is real.
Side note, Chaz loves Calypso.
Well, my parents love Calypso, and they have some good Calypso songs that I do like. But it's just amazing to see, even in 2022, the hard work of not just somebody as world famous as Maya Angelou, but locally here in Texas and Houston, throughout our region, how hard they have worked and how far we have come because of their work.
Right.
But I do want to mention that we still have a long way to go. It was George Mitchell's vision that the Woodlands becomes and grows into a diverse and inclusive place where everyone could live from different racial backgrounds, ethnicities, and even economic statuses. And the Woodlands is it has come a long way. And there's still a long way to go. We have a long way to go here, a very long way to go here. But there's still some stuff I wanted to point out. I was reading this article called by McKinsey and Company called "Building Supportive Ecosystems for Black-Owned U.S. Businesses," and a few things struck me, and one of them being Black-owned businesses also tend to earn lower revenues in most industries, and are overrepresented in low growth, low revenue industries such as food, service, and accommodations. It also went on to say only 1 in 20 Black Americans hold business equity. It shows that we have a long way to go. But we're all sitting in this room, and so we've come a long way. I also want to continue, not to sound negative on this Black History Month, but I do want us to touch on that we still have a long way to go. And ladies, do you have anything to say about that?
I think the response to that is because we are in this room, so it doesn't stop here. The saying that they always say, pull somebody by their hand. When you get up, you grab somebody else. And I think it's very important that it doesn't stop. We can't get big-headed about it. We can't leave anybody behind, because knowledge is wealth. And when you don't know and you don't have the resources, what can you do? Can you blame people? You can't.
Yeah, and for me, I feel like, my ancestors are carrying me through this.
Right.
The fight didn't end with them, and it's not going to end with me. We're still going to be breaking those barriers that we're fighting for us as young professionals. It's just in a different form now. But we are still fighting some of the fights that they have seen, and trying to just get that justice, equality being showcased where we are in our community, in our workplace. And, we just all want to live that American dream, right?
They also went on to say only 4% of Black American businesses survive the startup stage, even though 20% of Black Americans start businesses. And why do you think that is? Why do you all think that is?
A lot of it depends on the area that you're in.
Correct.
We just had a conversation before we actually started recording, how, it's quicker for young professionals or students at the time to get a student loan than to get a business loan and to become an entrepreneur. So it's kind of based on, it goes so far back, but it's to keep us in debt in a sense, to where that we're paying so much for school, and we're trying to find different avenues for us to get out of that, but then the door closes on us to even expand on a business opportunity for ourselves and to build our own legacy.
Well, and I think you also have to, I stated it before, knowledge is power. So in the idea of, we sit back and say, how do we thrive to get a business? Most people in low income areas, or people that you can be in a high income area and just not know. If you don't know that your credit is important, you're gonna go get a loan and you're gonna have no credit. No credit is just as good as bad credit. You just won't know. So you spend the next 3 to 5 years trying to build that while trying to have a family, while trying to be stable, while trying to make sure you don't, go afloat. Life still goes on.
Yeah.
It still goes on, and I think it's important to, again, grab a hand when you can, give that knowledge. I'm very thankful this part of my life I am working at a financial institution, because some things I hear, whether it's Roth IRA, I could say that to my family. I think we are very middle class-ish. Mom, don't kill me. I think we do pretty well, but that has nothing to do with knowledge. We all went to college. Most of my family has their doctorate degree. Roth IRA, what? When you don't know, you don't know.
That is true.
And you can't expect everyone to know when they're not put in situations where they would know.
Do you think that also has to do with the type of schools, funding in schools?
100%. You have HISD smack dab in the middle of the poorest part of Houston. As they continue to badger it to death, those people work hard.
Yeah.
They are surrounded by lots of organizations, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. Like, they're around a lot of organizations that try to help, but they're not getting the same funding as everybody else.
I must say, yes, we touched on Maya Angelo, we touched on, who else did we touch on? We touched on, Deloitte T Parker, and they worked so hard at a time where social injustice in America was, really high. It was, from somebody being international as myself, it was,
Right.
It was surprising because, we celebrate Black History Month in the Caribbean, but we celebrate Black history not just from a slavery standpoint, but from the success around a time when America was having social injustice problems. There were successful Black businessmen and women, successful Black family names back then, and it wasn't taboo. It wasn't. There was no separation, and so hearing about the issues and still seeing such issues and happening in America is surprising for the international community, and I could say I could speak for the international community,
Right.
Especially coming from a place where we are the majority,
Right.
and not a minority. But moving on from that, I still felt like this was so important to touch on because yes, we've had our forefathers and the people before us who worked so hard to push for this, but we're still struggling, we still aren't surviving in business the way that we need to survive in business. And so the next article, which I read, goes on to 6 reasons to support Black-owned businesses. And I know this will bring a lot of conversation. There'll be a lot of things to say. And I hope from this we'll be also assisting with George Mitchell's vision, because, this community will thrive on diversity when diverse. The world does better when it's diverse. It does better when it's inclusive.
Right.
And, and it also helps with business, because where there's business, there's growth.
Mm-hmm.
So who wants to talk about the 6 reasons? Or maybe I could just jump right into it. Well, the first one is close the racial wealth gap. And we know the racial wealth gap isn't something that just happened.
Or new.
Or it's not new. It happened because of a reason. And we're in 2022, and there's still a wealth gap.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually across so many other ethnicities as well. And there's the major gap. How do you guys think so? It says here, we can trace the origins of total racial wealth gap to Jim Crow era. Practices like redlining and job discrimination, which segregated African Americans from higher paying jobs and home ownership opportunities that ultimately prevented wealth building. Jim Crow era was, of course, before any of our time,
Right.
but this is still happening.
So I'm going to start
Okay.
with my own little plug. So I didn't get to speak a little bit about John Lewis. We just heard about his passing recently, but I want to read this quote, which kind of ties into what you just said. It's one of my favorite quotes. And it says, you cannot be afraid to speak up and speak out for what you believe. You have to have courage and raw courage. Which tying into that is opening your mouth. So the gap is there. We as people can only do so much. And I think that's why it's very important for other ethnicities to speak up as well, discrimination-wise, when things are just not right.
We're trying to get those allies.
Right. It's very important to speak up, have empathy,
Mm-hmm.
be understanding.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just being honest.
I think, you've heard the statement saying that, we all have the same access to everything, we all have the same opportunities, but when you look at history, we're really just starting to have opportunities. We're really just dabbling in it. You're hearing kids saying, oh, I'm the first person to go to college in my family. Or, I am the first person to own a business in my family. And it goes back to what we said about knowledge. When you don't know, you don't know. And there was information that just wasn't provided or wasn't, our those before us didn't think it was necessary.
Well, our ancestors were built off of survival. I think that's the difference. Living and surviving are not the same thing.
Yeah.
So when you come from, and this is minorities in general, this is not just African Americans. I think when you come up in survival, you're worried about working, you're worried about feeding your kids, you're worried about staying afloat. You are not worried about your son trying to get into tech school. As amazing as that sounds, it sounds amazing, but that's not your priority.
And then unfortunately for many of the minority individuals, they did not have a stepping stone to help them get to where they should be. And I think that kind of plays a part in that gap that we see now. You have families that had old school money that helped them, be able to send their kids to college, paying for them to go
passing down businesses,
being able to do that. And a lot of families, like Cameron said, a lot of them are just trying to keep their lights on in their homes, have food on the table. And that's the main focus, instead of trying to send them off to college. And what college would they go to at that time?
A lot of the wealth gap too, I think, came from, even after, slavery and even around the Jim Crow era and after, the segregation in living. The living situation, because as you say, it's a fight to survive, and the labels put on it, calling areas where blacks lived as the ghettos. So imagine businesses that probably came up in those areas and are still in those types of areas. They are considered ghetto businesses, and sorry to say it like that, but that's what people see it as. Not that they are, but it was the labels that were put on them that limit their growth, that limit the possibilities, and even those business owners are working to keep their business lights on and to help their family, as well as to be a rock for their communities.
Yeah, and I have to touch base. I know Cameron did, but speaking for myself and my parents and how they raised me, they were able to experience some of this growing up. They're a little older, so they done the marches, all of that great stuff. And it was something that stuck to me with my mom. She said she never wanted her children to ever suffer like they did. Hearing stories of like my dad walking to school. He had to walk with no new shoes. It was holes in the shoes. But making him go to school was the primary focus. Clothes, making sure he looked right and everything, that was a secondary thing. So they wanted to make sure we had the best of the best. And at the time, we're middle class too, raised in Lafayette and Louisiana. And one thing my parents instilled was the financial aspect. They made sure we understood money, understood how to save, understood retirement and how that would mean for us and look for us later on in life, but also made sure to strategically place us in the best education system that they had in Louisiana. So having us go to private school, they wanted us to have the same advantage as everyone else. Even though we were, they were still trying to maintain, but they did not want us to miss on anything or make us feel like we were less than. So I have to give it to my parents, and there are parents out there that make sure in whatever way their kids are being sent to the best school, having the best people surround them. And they have different programs. It's all about what you know and who you know, right? They do have programs that help. I know me going to a private school, it was a lot. Tuition is a lot. But they had resources that the school did assist you for minorities to go to school. So it's just things like that. They have avenues for you to better your kids and better your life situation. So I really take that into effect as I become a mother later on, that I want to make sure my kids are better than what I am now and have now, so.
I agree with that, and I agree with that because coming to America, not the movie, but me coming to America, I had never heard of A and B and C schools. I mean, in the Caribbean or in my country, I could speak for my country, in St. Kitts and Nevis, education is provided for everybody. Public schools were better than private schools, and everybody is. I mean, it's the same level of education, and no one is missing out. And coming here, I was shocked to even realize there are A or B and C schools, and it is allowed. That was a shocker for me, and it really fueled for me to work hard to make sure that my daughter is going to an A school. And I made it a big deal because.
But I think that's important. I think you not knowing. I think the normalcy is ridiculous. I think you're proving an amazing point. Yeah. The normalcy is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Your shocking should be the common ground. The fact that we even talk about, I heard somebody say this yesterday, it killed me. She was a college student and she said, yeah, because I grew up thinking that universities weren't as good. I mean, state schools weren't as good as universities. And in my mind, of course, that's what they teach you, realistically. But in my mind, we should all be shocked. We should all be shocked that there are so many options, that community colleges look down on, that even a GED is looked down on. Like, we should be so flabbergasted, but the normalcy is scary.
Yeah.
That's the scary part. And now you have to fight for your daughter to do what? Get into?
Well, I mean, we had to move. We actually liked our neighborhood, but we had to move. My neighborhood was the neighborhood I live in now is really good. It's really diverse too. But the other neighborhood, my neighbor was Mexican, and man, did we teach each other about each other's culture. And it was sad that, I had to move from that, just to get Mia into a better district. And even you talk about community college in St. Kitts and in most Caribbean countries, and this is Black History Month, and Black history is the same in any country where we celebrate it, and we celebrate Black history big, but to get an associate's degree is free. I only paid $100 and something of my currency for the exams to get my associate's degree in business, and that is a prestige. That is amazing, where you have a lot of people, graduate in high school because we have a big graduation rates, and that's another thing that I was surprised about. Here is the graduation rates, and that what's allowed, and the fact that people don't go on to the associates, and the associate's degree looks small, but in my country, you move on and you get that associate's, and then you move on to a college, whether it's in the Caribbean, whether it's the University of the West Indies, or I went to Indiana University, and a whole year was shaved off of my education because of my associate's degree. It also put us in a higher bracket. Like, education is so important. I mean, globally, but back home, educating kids for free with all resources possible.
I think you set the stage though, because then we talk about why businesses fail. So we talk about why Black businesses fail.
Yeah.
You just answered the question in a little bit, because what you go to school 4 years. Let's say bare minimum. You go to school 4 years. How much debt is that? 50? 40? Don't go out of state. Don't you dare.
Well, if you're international, 35 a year times 4. 35,000 a year times 4.
Yeah, like don't go out of state. And so you come out of school. I think that was a big one we touched before we started talking about the presidential election, which is why it was so important, because canceling student debt is real. So we get to 21, 22 years old for young African Americans, and we start off with $100,000 in debt. You want me to go buy a house? You want me to go buy a car? What do you want me to do?
And that's why you can't start a business. I mean, you already have, not you, but just saying.
And at the same time.
Oh, baby, I have my master's too. I got that too. It's there.
Yeah.
It's there.
I do too, But that's the choice I made to advance myself in my professional world and also my education. I wanted to be a well-rounded individual. But I know we touched base on, thinking of all this debt that we're accumulating. later on, we're like, oh, for us to purchase this home, oh, to purchase this car that we want, and all this stuff, your credit score is a biggie. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think, student loans and all that do not play a factor in anything that you're trying to do and invest in, but it does.
And I think nowadays they bring your credit for everything. Down to water, lights, like cable, like it's literally everything. Your credit is everything, and it's important. And again, knowledge
It's power.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I knew at the time
Right.
that they had grants, for minorities. They had scholarship options you could do just for your industry that you're in,
Right.
your field that you're trying to go into. I wish I took more advantage of, getting myself out there and connecting with that.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you're going to college, make sure you look at all of those grants and
Everywhere does
scholarships.
it.
Call the school and ask for it because they'll give it to you.
Apply for every grant.
Everything.
I don't care. Apply for every single one of them. And I'm not kidding. Apply for every single one of them.
And doing that, something as simple as that, could bring it back to point number one, close the racial wealth gap. All right, does anybody else have anything to add to point number one?
I just want to do a shout out to my parents for helping me undergrad, because that's why I don't have so many loans. But no, seriously, paying back loans is really important. And I think we have to also touch on the idea of I was even thankful to get a loan to go to school for my master's, because that's not for everybody, and it's also not readily available.
Right. Yeah, and there's also the problem students run into, especially minorities who don't come from families who can't afford school. You get the loan, you can't pay the loan back, so you can't finish that degree because they won't give you another loan to finish school.
Right.
And then they never get the degree, they never get the job they are able to get. But fortunately, we have people who are willing to lend that helping hand, going back to what you said, lend that helping hand to help those students become successful eventually. So,
And that will help bridge the gap.
right.
And I have to give a shout out to my parents too. Although I have student loans, it's nearly not
amen
as
to
much
that.
as so many other people. So I'm very thankful for that, and thank you for my dad's military service. That has helped. But
Shout out to my dad.
yeah, but everybody doesn't have a story like Cameron or Margot,
Right.
or even Andrea. The story that you just kind of said, the struggle that people go through.
Right.
Working and going to school and don't have enough money to pay for the tuition. So,
Well, I am grateful for my great-grandfather who worked on the Panama Canal to save money to put himself through dentistry school and became the first dentist on the island, who went on to have a cattle ranch, a salt mining location. He owned the whole southeast end of the island, and without him, I don't think my family would be where they are today. And he also went to an HBCU.
awesome.
So the next point says strengthen local economies. When small businesses flourish, so do their communities. And we say this all the time here at the Chamber. When small businesses flourish, so do their communities. But banks often hinder that prosperity by discriminating against African Americans and other entrepreneurs of color seeking small business loans. I think we touched on that. We kind of touched on bridging the racial wealth gap and strengthening local economies with loans, and not just student loans, but loans for businesses. I mean, some of these businesses are brilliant, they're phenomenal, but they just don't have that chance to flourish. And I think that would come about when banks provide the loans, and it's not just loans, it's financial literacy.
Okay, let's talk about it, because there's my next plug
Yeah.
to myself. So I'm a community development coordinator. That's basically what I do. And we try not to call it financial literacy because it makes it seem, we call it financial education. 9 minutes educating you. I go to businesses and I go to schools and talk about buying a car, FAFSA, getting your first apartment, what that looks like, saving, your first credit card, you turn 16, you have a job, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's important to know the difference between a bank and a credit union, because remembering credit unions are by the community for the community.
Absolutely.
Cameron, where do you work?
5 Point Credit Union. I think that's important to know the difference as well, because banks are for profit. That is what they're for. So knowing, again, knowledge is power, knowing go to your local credit union. They usually have the lower rates. You know, you've heard your grandparents say it 100 times. It's a factual statement, and I can still say that today. And they are for you. They go slower in technology for the simple fact of being there for you and being present. But they want to make sure that they can help somebody physically and all of that other good stuff. But you can go ahead. That was my plug.
I'm all for the credit unions. They've helped me a whole lot. So, you know, I'm always taking advantage of that with the lowest interest rates.
Well, and I must say that Coming to America, again, not the movie, I heard that I actually have built my credit through credit unions as well. So here we go, strengthen local economies, and credit unions are important for that. And in terms of financial literacy, financial education, and promoting it, I think it's so important. And not just financial literacy and education just for high schoolers or people getting their apartment, but for business owners. You know, hey, here's what you're getting into. Here's how your spreadsheet should look, your account sheet should look, and what looks good. And here's a resource for you, because that falls in line with strengthening, because as it says, when small businesses flourish, so do their communities.
Absolutely.
Oh, the next one is tough to talk about, especially with this great resignation that's going on, but it's foster job creation. But I think that's what the great resignation has done. You hear people resigning because they're about to get into their passion. The pandemic made them realize, this is not my passion, but my passion is here, and I'm gonna go for it. And that actually is not a problem. That keeps us growing and advancing and innovating, and keeps communities providing employment for people. Because when you start a job or you foster job creation, then the person who may not have the confidence to start a job, you can hire them and you can help them and you feed a family, and that also helps communities. But does anybody have anything they want to add when it comes to fostering job creations?
I think you hit it.
So that was point number 3. It says, many African American business owners fund their own business due to the lack of capital mentioned earlier. It ends with saying, since Black-owned small businesses are likely to hire from the local community, supporting them can foster the job opportunities people need to achieve financial stability. People just need a chance. And it's not about where you come from. It's every human being needs a chance, and especially, dispelling the narratives of where Black businesses are, and traveling to that area to support that Black business. I mean, I know we all could think about a good restaurant or a good business place. Like I travel far to support other Caribbean restaurants, as far as to the south side of Houston. And, not only is that my people, that's a Black business, and that business hires people. And so when I support them, I am helping to support that community. I'm helping to support their employees and stuff like that.
Same here. I know February kicks off Houston Black Restaurant Week. So that is something that I take part. I try to hit for restaurants and just shopping in general. I try to shop Black. So I try to engulf and kind of bring the money that I normally spend in my community and certain communities that need growth and need the business and have understanding, but also just trying to attract more people into some of the stores and some of the restaurants, because they are really great restaurants that a lot of people aren't aware of.
Yeah, and it's sad to see those great restaurants, not do so well because they're not having that clientele come in, that large group come in. And then just going back to these businesses that aren't flourishing and communities that aren't flourishing because their businesses aren't flourishing, it ties into taxes too. Like if the business is flourishing, those taxes go back into the community and can help the community flourish. When the businesses aren't flourishing in a certain community, well, the community's not going to flourish. And so it's really upsetting to see stuff like that, and people get so confused. They're like, I don't want to go to that, I'm not going to go, or whatever, I can go X, Y, Z, A, B, C. But yeah, I mean, it's so important to support really good businesses and the communities, because it helps the community, and I don't think people understand how it helps.
And we're all connected, right?
Right.
We all want to see our area, our surrounding areas flourish. So, I mean, just think about it. we have we're here in the Woodlands, but spring is right next. Think of opportunities where you can go ahead and, share some of those opportunities, spend your money at some of the local shops over there as well and help it flourish because it all connects us together.
Yeah, point number 4 is one of my favorite, and it's something that I always push. And you can't understand a community unless you understand its culture.
Yes.
And point number 4: celebrate Black culture and serve communities. And culture is so important to me. And Black culture is not just what we see in front of us. I mean, there are so many elements to it. There is my Black culture. There's you guys' Black culture. There is the African Black culture. There is Canadian Black culture. There is Central American and South American Black culture. And understanding it and the beauties of it. I mean, I feel like we love it when it comes to music and dance. But do we understand it? And if we understand culture, it then becomes a big celebration and a big system of support through simply understanding someone's culture. It says here, many Black entrepreneurs start businesses inspired by the richness of African American culture itself, such as Black-owned clothing stores, hair care, makeup products, children toys. These are just some examples. Do you guys have any examples of culture and why understanding Black culture could help to even reduce the wealth gap, could help to, help Black businesses grow even more?
I think that it's important, and I am loving this wave of time. So I'll throw it out there first because I love her and it's fine. So my mom works for the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So I was brought up in that. Being Black was a prize. Being dark-skinned was a prize. And a lot of Americans do not grow up in that same mindset. And I think it's very important that we have started to love us because nobody else can love us until we love us. And I think I love this curly hair thing. I'm loving all of it. I'm loving being comfortable in the skin that we're in. And I think it makes other ethnicities respect us.
Yeah.
And we can only do that together.
Yeah, and it also helps, and you touch on a good point, when we start respecting ourselves, because respect starts from us first, then we start growing. And we have seen that. I mean, even in the hair care product that we use, I mean, I love my curly hair. I don't have it out now, but I love my curly hair and its difficulties and the different, that no curl is the same. But beginning to love yourself also gives you that confidence. So when you start with me, I am good enough to go out and start that business in Hughes Landing. Right. I am good enough to go out and start that business on the waterway.
Yes.
I am good enough to go out and join the chamber. And it's not just because I'm Black, but it's because I'm good enough. And I think that is so important in the confidence. That internal confidence helps you to shine, and helps you to strive, and helps to bridge gaps, and helps to put you in the right places, because we know it's not what you know, as Margaret said, it's who you know. So that one.
And I think that's what inspires so much of the businesses we see in the African American community. Hair is our biggest thing. I feel like hair is our crown that we wear.
Yes.
It showcases the variety of who we are as a culture. It's kind of unique to see that we have light skin to dark skin, complexion, but the beauty is all there, So that's really unique. I have my curls, I have my braids, I do it all. For me, it took me a little while longer to accept my curls, because I always saw myself that I had to be this individual that needed to wear her hair straight and needed to look a certain way to be in, or have a seat at the table. Let me say that. Have a seat at the table. But that is not true. And I'm learning to embrace that and embrace who I am, because it is a part of my heritage and my culture.
And I'm loving that businesses are also loving that they're also having to almost force themselves to accept it. I think understanding culture, I think it's a big thing. Understanding that braids for Black women is the way that we way that we roll. It's a part of our crown. And for it to not be accepted because of it's not the average or not the normal doesn't make it unacceptable.
Yeah.
I think it's understanding. You have to understand.
The world is good with its when we understand the differences. And ladies, I just want to say this conversation was I enjoyed this conversation. There's so many myths and that we can dispel. There are so many advice that we could give to help to grow our the African American community, the Black community, and to tell them that hey, George Mitchell's dream included you. The Woodlands Chamber is here for you, and we're not just a chamber for one set of people. We're a chamber for all. Everybody strives here. Everybody succeeds here. We all hold each other's hand and we pull you along. And not that I wanted to throw a plug, but it is true. It is very true. And I just want to say thank you so much and happy Black History Month.
Yes, and kudos to everyone. I'm working here at the chamber, but I want to thank the chamber and our CEO, JJ, for allowing us to even speak on this platform and to kind of open the eyes of this and share some facts about people who have impacted us here nationally or even just in local area, but also share some things that we have gone through growing up and into our professional careers. So thank you, Chaz, for handling all this and allowing us to share as well.
And thank you all for being so knowledgeable and so well and spoken and just bringing this mission around. And it was actually both of your ideas. The two of you had a great idea to do this, and I appreciate it. And thank you, Andrea,
for your insight.
I know.
Yes.
And we all are young professionals, and we are the future. And actually, the future is now. And if it isn't us, then who will it be? To tell our peers and to tell the younger generation, hey, step out, have confidence in yourself. You can do business, become financially educated, join a chamber, join a community group that helps to push you because you can do it. Whether you're African American or of any minority group, you can do it.
But I challenge our viewers as well before we
Yes.
log off as we celebrate Black History Month in February. Go out to some of these Black-owned businesses and learn about it. Get questions about who they are and why they just started the business that they did, and their importance in the community that they're serving. So just go out, and ask those questions. That's what it's all about. That's the helping hand that they're looking for.
And remembering to grab a hand.
Grab a
You don't
hand
have to just
along
be
the way.
Black. Grab somebody's hand.
Yeah.
If you are in a position to grab someone and help somebody, that's how we make the communities better.
This is all by opportunity. We
Correct.
all just need that chance, and we'll blow your mind with it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
All right.